On this week's Eastern Conference edition of Locked On NHL, we are going to focus on the Atlantic Division, where top to bottom, it's about as tight of a race through 10 games as you could possibly imagine. And in honor of Halloween tomorrow, we'll do a little trick or treat. That's all coming up on this week's Eastern Conference edition of Locked On NHL, your team every day.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in another edition of Locked On NHL, your team every day. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me 5 days a week over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. And as always, it's a Battle of Ontario edition. I'm joined by Mike DiStefano from Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs. Today, we're going to discuss the Atlantic Division at length because if you look at the standings this early in the season, I know some people love it, some people hate it, but you cannot deny that this division is as tightly contested as any in the National Hockey League. So we'll have that conversation and then trick or treat. Who's tricking us around the National Hockey League with hot starts or slow starts, and who has been a treat to watch that we think will continue in this direction? Got to tell you, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return over at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Locked On. New customers can place a $5 bet, and if you win, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. So go visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today is Wednesday, October 30th, and Mikey, the Atlantic Division, man, where do you want to start?
Well, you were boots on the ground for the Leafs game the other night when they were in Winnipeg, and I thought they actually looked way better because the week prior, not good, right? They beat by the Bruins, beat by St. Louis, and it didn't look Columbus wallop them. Columbus seems to be walloping everybody these days. Edmonton took a beating from them too. And it wasn't looking good in Leafs Nation. I can tell you that. Dave and I over on Locked On Leafs were getting a little bit antsy with how things were shaking out throughout the first month of the season. And then they got their act together against Winnipeg. And you're in the building for it. I thought the Maple Leafs played just a quality, sound hockey game in that one. Craig Berube style hockey.
The Winnipeg Jets are a fast hockey team. I mean, the start is undeniable. 8-0 to start the year going into that game. But I felt like the Leafs were not only the faster team, but they grinded it out down low. That was a Max Pacioretty performance for his old self. You think back to his days as a perennial 30 goal scorer, and like the pass he made on one of those early goals from behind the net was beautiful. He gets one of his own too. That was an awesome performance from a guy who was on a PTO just a couple weeks ago. You mentioned the temperature high in Leafsland. Felt the same way in Ottawa until last night's game where they beat the wheels off the St. Louis Blues 8-1 because they were leading in Vegas with 4 minutes left, and they let that one slip away in regulation. And then in Sunday, in a game they had no business being in the way they played, tied it in the third period against the Colorado Avalanche team and didn't get a point out of that one despite being tied with 8 minutes left. So points are at such a premium in the Atlantic Division to start the season. You needed to come away with at least one in two tough barns, albeit, but for them to come back and put an 8-1 showing on home ice, it kind of eased some concerns. So similar vibe, it seems like, between our two clubs.
Well, when you're coming off a big win, you're always feeling excited about it. But you bring up the fact that it is so tight. And, the reason why everyone says, oh, Leaf fans, they're absolute lunatics. They lose one game to Columbus and they go off the wagon. It's like, this has been an issue for Toronto for years. And the difference between winning and losing those games often turns out to be home ice in the playoffs. And we know how much that means in the playoffs when it comes to hockey, especially. Home ice is a big time factor. And when you miss out on those easy points, quote unquote easy points against the Columbuses, you're dropping points to Boston there with a terrible giveaway in your own end to Marchand. Like, you're just making stupid plays like that, like the Leafs did this week. Cost yourself points. And in the end, if they end up, 4 or 5 points shy of a home berth in round one, well, this is why those games, those points that just get pissed away. So they're very important. It's not like it's whether it's a point in October, a point in January, or a point in March. A point's a point. It all goes towards, the final total at the end that seeds you in the playoffs. So I think that's why a lot of fans get up in arms. And when you look at the Atlantic Division right now specifically, it is insanely tight from top to bottom. Each point matters, Ross. Every single one,
And we'll
especially
pull
the
it.
interdivisional games.
Well, we'll pull this up here on YouTube for our friends watching here, and this is of course before Wednesday's slate, where we do have one all Eastern Conference matchup, and between the New York Islanders visiting those Columbus Blue Jackets, and then a number of cross conference games. Detroit's hosting Winnipeg, the Lightning are in Colorado, and we've got the New Jersey Devils in Vancouver to take on the Canucks. But heading into those games tonight, the Atlantic Division second place and last place are separated by 3 points. And yes, Tampa does have a game in hand there. They've figured it out at home, especially 4-1 record at home at Amalie Arena, one of the better home ices in the National Hockey League over the course of the last number of years. But between the teams that we all thought would be competing for those wild card spots, Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo, and even, Montreal's 4-5-1, and their losses have been disgustingly bad, but then they've found ways to win
Yeah.
other. So it's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde situation for them, which I think if you're a Montreal fan, you're just happy that except for the 2 games at home that they dropped recently to the Rangers and to the Seattle Kraken, they've been in every game and showing that heart. And I think even last night, I wonder how it finished. I tuned in at 6-0, and it was or 6-1 rather, and Slavkovsky was a +1 somehow in that game. So, as long as those kids are playing well and the Lane Hudson hype train continues, they're going to be happy with wherever the chips fall in terms of standings this year. And comment on the video if you disagree with that. But I think the clock starts there when Ivan Demidov comes over from Russia. In the meantime, though, it's that Detroit, Ottawa, Buffalo trio that, shocker, they're all clumped up in the standings here as well in the early going. And I think in particular, I want to touch on Buffalo because they started out 1-4 and it seemed like all hope was lost. And then they were able to rattle off a few wins. And Tage Thompson in particular looks like he's back to his goal scoring self after a bit of a down year last season.
Yeah, dude, like Tage Thompson, like that guy can really he can really rip the puck. Like he is such an incredible shooter out there. And that's a team that for sure, got off to a really slow start. And I remember hearing about this before. I've heard interviews and I've spoken with a couple of players who've had to go overseas to start the year, or even if they go overseas midway through the season, it really does kind of screw the team up for like 2-3 weeks before they get back into the swing of things and into a proper routine. So that could be, the explanation for Buffalo, right? They go over, they get, pantsed in both games by the Devils. And then they get back on North American ice and a little bit of a stumble out of the gate. But now they're starting to settle in. It's been a couple of weeks. And now they're starting to play some games and win some games. And you've got some players who are stepping up, who we always thought were good. And last year, when, there was some who believed that Buffalo could take that next step, it was because what you had seen, the Alex Tucks of the world, the Tage Thompsons of the world, the steps that Darlene and Owen Power are making. And they didn't quite take that step last year, but this year, the last couple weeks in particular, all those players that I just mentioned have taken that next step and are trying to power this team back into playoff positioning. Like Tage Thompson, he's unbelievable. He's got like 6-7 goals at this point. 7. Rasmus Dahlin is arguably right now, in the hunt for a Norris Trophy. Tuck, and you've got Jack
JJ
Quinn.
Peterka is unbelievable too.
Peterka's unreal. I think Owen Power's got like 9 or 10 points himself.
8 points in 10 games for Owen Power. He's starting to find his rhythm too.
And that's not let's not go any further without talking about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who's been great for them between the pipes. The games that they're winning, he's been the backbone of those teams. So, yeah, I was a believer. I thought Buffalo was the team that could kind of fit their way into the playoffs this year between the Ottawas, the Detroits, and the Buffaloes. Like we all said, one of those 3, it's time for one of them to take a step. And it looks like Buffalo has figured it out. But the thing is, Ottawa's figuring it out as well. And so is Detroit. So, I mean, they're all in the same boat right now. But who can keep it going longer, I guess? And who can keep it going all the way through until playoff time? That's the question.
Well, the wheels in Ottawa have fallen off in November the last number of years. So I don't think any Sens fan's going to be unrealistic until they see it's 14-game month for the Ottawa Senators as well. Starts with a back-to-back on the road at MSG on Friday, then at home against Seattle on Saturday. So I think there's a lot of cautious optimism in Ottawa. And
I
I think
mean,
an
at least
interesting stat here. Go ahead.
being over 500 has got to be a good feeling though for Ottawa at this point in the month of October. Like, have they not been like under 500 the last like 6 years coming out of October? That's
Yeah,
been their biggest crux. Their
l-
starts have been awful.
last year it took until their 11th game to get their 5th win. So they get in their ninth game this year. So a little bit better. And you're just hoping that they keep building on it. And I mean, Linus Ullmark has to be healthy. We can go to goaltending on any one of these three
Yeah.
teams. Alex Lyon's been phenomenal in goal for the Detroit Red Wings. He's 4-2-2 with a
Yeah.
940 save percentage as well. Like his start's been unbelievable. Just stealing that crease. And what I also like about Detroit too is they're finding ways to win in games where they have no business winning. They got outshot heavily in back-to-back games, but were able to win both of them. And if you look at them situationally this year, they're actually 4-2-1 when they're outshot by their opponents, and they're 0-2 when they outshoot their opponents. So some early
Weird.
season stats anomalies there.
Yeah, very, very strange. Curious. I'm just gonna check and see what their expected goals are at, like where they rank at this point. Third last. So they rank 30th in the NHL in expected goals. So maybe a little bit of PDO luck at that point. Possibly we see things come down to earth for Detroit. I wouldn't say that's a recipe for success, getting outshot in 6 of your first 9 games.
Yeah.
If they're gonna be a playoff team, they gotta definitely pick it up a little bit, I would say. They're getting
But
lucky right now.
I mean, you can also just change that in an instant. Like, I'm pretty sure Ottawa was 29th in expected goals percentage in the league, and then they win 8-1, and now all of a sudden they're middle of the pack. So it's still
Yeah,
early in the
still
season,
early.
but
But I
after
also would imagine Alex Lyon's not gonna be a 940 goaltender the rest of the way either.
yeah, we got more on the Atlantic Division coming up. I'm so fascinated by this division, not only at the top where you have the Florida Panthers, who are in Finland, by the way, getting set to take on the Dallas Stars in
Mhm,
what will be an awesome homecoming for Alexander Barkov. Suffered an injury in the Sens home opener. I think it was the second game, yes, for Florida, because they raised the banner and beat the wheels off the Boston Bruins in game one.
mhm,
Great to see him back. The league's better when he's at his best, and he's going to get to go and take on Miro Heiskanen and the Dallas Stars. So they got two big Finnish superstars in that game, the two games that are going on this upcoming weekend, but they've also pulled away now. They're 7-3-1 on the season, 3 points up on Tampa for first in the division now, albeit 2 games in hand for Tampa early. But we'll talk about those Florida teams more and what the heck is going to be the difference between making it and missing it in the Atlantic Division. Then we'll get some trick or treat in honor of Halloween. That's all next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money on sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Here's what you do. You pick more or less for at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if just one of your picks doesn't hit. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Now at Prize Picks, you can just download the app. It's super easy to use. And when you go in, use code LOCKEDONNHL to get that $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDONNHL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers out there that ride with us, whether it's on audio or on YouTube, where we are free and available. If you want daily fantasy hockey help, go check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden have got you covered with everything you need to know in the ever-changing landscape of fantasy hockey. One thing's for sure, in fantasy hockey and in the National Hockey League, your best players will win you games. And we're seeing that this season as well with the Tampa Bay Lightning and Nikita Kucherov continuing his hot start, 14 points in 9 games for Nikita
Unreal.
Kucherov. The Eastern Conference point leader right now, though, Sam Reinhart with 16 points in 11 games. So these top end players are producing. Those two Florida teams, let's sit on them for a quick minute here because I think they deserve some respect as the class, the two last Eastern Conference teams to win the Stanley Cup. You had Colorado and Vegas in the middle there. 2 for the Tampa Bay Lightning, 2020, 2021. And then, of course, the Florida Panthers last season. What would it take to get another playoff matchup between these two teams? Because they don't like each other, and it is just rating. I don't know about the ratings in terms of being in South Florida, but any true hockey fan is tuning in whenever those two teams play.
No, absolutely. You're talking about two of the best teams in the league, not just the Atlantic or the Eastern Conference. I mean, these are two of the best teams in the league. They won the Stanley Cup, what, 3 the last 5 years?
Yep.
So like we're talking about the best of the best, the cream of the crop. What to me is so amazing about what Florida's been able to do, though, and like a lot of this credit goes to Sam Reinhart, obviously, is the fact that they've been able to do a lot of this without Barkov, and Matt Tkachuk missed like a week of play, missed 3 games, I believe, as well due to injury. And Carter Haggy had a slow start to the season. So like this was a lot of Sam Reinhart putting the team on his back in a way and just scoring a bunch of goals. And Sam Bennett also has had a really good start to the year. And it's just a next man up mentality that this team has. Really, the depth is truly there with this group. And you could say the same thing to Tampa Bay. They've got a super deep team as well. I mean, you got like Nick Paul is putting
Overtime
up a
winner.
lot of points, like overtime winner, but the guy's got like what, 7, 8, 9 points. Like the guy's putting up some offense. Anthony Cirelli
Well,
is
we used to
putting up
say
some
in Ottawa,
offense.
Nick Paul does it all. Like he's
Nick
literally
Paul,
the
he does.
perfect Swiss Army knife for a team. He's also, I think, underrated in terms of his physicality, and he's an enormous human being.
Yeah, no, he's an unbelievable player. Like he is the epitome of like a perfect third liner for any hockey team who could add on both ends of the ice, defensively and offensively. So, like, yeah, I think we all want to see that, and Leaf fans want to see that even more so that Toronto doesn't have to play either of those teams. I bet Ottawa would rather not play either of those teams as well.
Hey, they've beaten them both this year. Beating them both this year already.
Yeah, I mean Toronto beat the doors off of Tampa too, so like
Yeah.
that happened. So it's not as though Toronto hasn't had success against the Lightning, but we've seen that twice before, right? Toronto Tampa series. It is 1-1. I guess there's a rubber match to be had at some point. Maybe we do get that this year. But remember a couple weeks ago when people were talking about how did Andre Vasilevsky lose a step? Is he done? Is he sunk? Is that going to be curtains for the Tampa Bay Lightning? No, settle down, guys. He's okay. He's fine. He's good.
He's not only fine, he's unbelievable. When you look
He's
at
a
just
good
his
goalie.
body of work, man, like he just gives the team so much confidence, and no surprise that he's right near the top of the league in save percentage as well. Even though he did have a couple things, he's at a 905, so I shouldn't say he's at the top of the league. And you look at just like the consistency that you're getting out of these top end teams. So I'm excited to see what the Atlantic Division is going to hold. What do you think comes down to? For these bubble teams, not the Tampas and the Floridas who we expect to be in the mix come playoff time. But what do you think is going to be the separating factor? Because right now, even though the standings are tight, there's some real large divides. We already talked about Detroit being, I don't want to say a merchant, but having a lot of their success rely on their goaltending early on in the year. Ottawa's success has relied on their power play, which leads the Eastern Conference and is second in the league behind the Winnipeg Jets. Ottawa's clicking at 42% on the power play right now, whereas Buffalo is dead last in the league in power play at 6.9%.
Yeah, where's Toronto? Right below them, I bet. Like 10% power play. It's gross.
They're one of the 3 teams below 10%.
Yeah, it's gross. Absolutely gross. I mean, what's going to be the separator? It's always kind of what's the separator. Health, one being the obvious, but like you said, goaltending. Goaltending can steal you games, and goaltending can cost you games. If you get a hot goalie, they can win you a bunch of games and just keep stockpiling points for your team. And that's ultimately what I think is going to possibly be the difference. Like I think that's why Ottawa went out and spent, will they get first round pick to go and get Linus Ullmark and paid him all that money
And
they knew.
superstar Mark Kastelik in that trade too. He's off to a
Yeah,
great start with
and they
Boston.
gave up Mark Kastelik as well. But, like, they just knew they needed someone to stop pucks. They've gone too many years without someone who could do that, and it's cost them a lot of points in the past. So they made the effort to go and do that. The Leafs went out and got Anthony Stolarz, who's been great for them. And obviously, Alex Lyon has emerged here for the Detroit Red Wings. They put Ville Husso on waivers. He's been so bad. They're like, this guy can't stop a beach ball. Don't want him around the team. Okay, we're going to roll forward with Lyon now. And, Buffalo's getting that goaltending too now from Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen over the last couple of weeks. So it's going to come down to just that, honestly. Which goalie can get hot? Who can stop pucks? Because I think all four of those teams, and we'll throw Boston in there as well. Like right now, they're last in the division technically, but Boston's certainly going to be in this mix. Another team with a great goaltender in Jeremy Swayman, but a bit of a question mark just because he's never been the guy. Now he's the guy, right? So what can he do? Is he going to break down later on in the season? And if not, can they rely on Jonas Korpisalo to play 35 games or so? I don't know. We'll have to find out. I think that's ultimately what's going to come down to health for the best players, and then goaltending. Who can get a hot goalie who can make some saves, win some games, steal some points, and steal enough to get you into the postseason.
We'll be tracking this all season long, both here on Locked On NHL's Eastern Conference Roundup every Wednesday and on our own shows, Locked On Senators, Locked On Maple Leafs. And make sure you subscribe to all your favorite Locked On NHL shows, local experts on the biggest stories. Trick or treat coming up next, including the Pittsburgh Penguins, that and more. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NHL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NHL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Network.
Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me at Locked On Senators. That's Mike DiStefano from Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs. Some trick or treat. We've seen Halloween as one of those stop marks in the NHL where you finish October. Okay, how'd you start? Then it's American Thanksgiving towards the end of November, where that is where you look. And I think it's 85% of teams that are in a playoff spot at that point end up in the dance come April. Before we get to the Pittsburgh Penguins, we have to discuss Marc-Andre Fleury's likely final return to Pittsburgh. He gets a win with the Minnesota Wild last night. I thought the video tribute was extremely classy. They went more so on the trick side of it. Notorious prankster Marc-Andre Fleury. They showed a barrage of him putting Ben Lovejoy and some other Penguins rookies back in the day, putting their entire hotel room out into the hall. They showed him taping up Sidney Crosby's gear at the All-Star game. Just a very likable player. And man, Minnesota's off to a great start. And Fleury, along with Philip Gustafsson, are a big reason why.
The Gus bus, absolutely. Marc-Andre Fleury. It's going to be a big game, and it will finally be the last time. Although, if you recall, was it last year? Didn't they sit him in that game?
I think so.
I think they sat him. I doubt they're going to do that this year. I would imagine Fleury will get the start in this game because
it was last night, brother.
Sorry, it was last night. My bad. I thought you were teeing it up tonight. How'd that game? I didn't even see the game. How'd it go?
5-3 Minnesota.
There you go. There you go.
And it was tight. It was tight in the third period. The Penguins brought it to within one goal in the third. 3 minutes in, Rickard Rakell and Kaprizov got the empty netter with 19 seconds left. So, I mean, another classic Sidney Crosby, 3 points, and the Penguins score 3 goals. And it just sucks to see them struggle. Like, I guess as a guy who's lost my team to the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think 4 times in the playoffs. Yeah, I'm kind of like watching over their demise a little bit, but the fact that Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Erik Karlsson are on a team that's 3-7-1 through 11 games. I mean, that's unfathomable. Is that a trick to you? Or is that something that you think is going to last the rest of the season?
No, I think this is an issue. This is an issue. So it's not like a trick. No, like this is real. Like it's not a treat to watch, I can tell you that. So it's not necessarily either. I think this is real though. I do think that this is a team that's going to struggle mightily. They can't get a save. Like we talked about how goaltending was so massive and is going to be a differentiator between a team making and missing the playoffs. You're looking at a Pittsburgh Penguins team who sent Tristan Jarry down to the minors. They're like, yeah, let's send this guy on a conditioning stint. Like we're just not gonna, or they sent him home, I guess, not to the minors, but they sent him home on a road trip to work with their goaltending coach because they didn't think that he was in the right space of mind or something. Like it was bizarre what ended up happening. They've allowed 48 goals this year, which is more than anyone else in the NHL. It's the most goals that a team has allowed. And that's their biggest issue. They can score all they want. We've got 33 goals this year. Sid's going to do his thing. Carlson's going to provide some offense. Brian Rust, Bunting will probably score at some point here, but they can't keep the puck out of the back of the net. And that's the issue. And I don't think that's going to change. I really don't. I think this is going to be a tough watch and a lot of high scoring affairs for the Pittsburgh Penguins this year.
And we know that they're a team that they're built to win now from the ages of their players. Like, do they start thinking about making, I don't want to call it a panic trade, but there's a hometown kid they've got who's wasting away on the bench in Anaheim in John Gibson. Is that a way? I don't know how they'd fit the salary in and all that, but that's Dostal's crease in Anaheim. He's been, for my money, the best goalie in the league this year.
But
the way he's keeping them in games, but like they have Pittsburgh is dead last in goals against average. Like that cannot continue if they want any hope of being a playoff team.
I agree, but can you really do that if you're Pittsburgh? You're already up against it, and you just continue to get older and older. You're gonna keep going down that well. I don't know, man. That'd be a tough sell. A tough sell.
Everyone up front to them that's contributing, like even Lars Eller's one of their top scoring players this year, and like he's 35. Like even beyond that initial top end talent that we know that they have and that are ageless for the most part. I mean, like Chris Letang, you're probably looking for a little more from him. 4 points -8 in 11 games for Chris Letang, but like all their top contributors outside of Rickard Rakell, you could say is in the prime of his career. I think he's 30-31. Outside of that, you're looking at like the 35 plus club here.
Yeah, no, it's an aging group, man, and they have been, and they continue to get older. This summer, their big addition was what? Kevin Hayes?
Yeah.
It just, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing over there, but it's not a good, the team's not a good spot. They're trending in the wrong direction, and they just extended Sid, which, whatever, you were obviously going to do that, but,
crazy that he took 8.7, by the way.
Absolutely, but it's like, you're not going to win. Like, Sid's basically effectively said, yeah, I'm going to remain a lifer, and I've already accepted that I'm not going to win another Stanley Cup. This team is not built to they're barely built to make the playoffs, let alone win a Stanley Cup.
Well, it didn't make it last year, and as we wake up here on this day, like they are sitting in dead last in the Eastern Conference.
That's what I'm saying, Brooksy. I think that this is what they are, man. I think that they're a mess, and it's tough to watch. I mean, Sid's still doing what he can do, but if you can't get a save, I mean, you're screwed in this league, and that's their big problem.
Trick or treat, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who I think every hockey fan is cheering for to overachieve this year based on their roster. What is the outlook for them as a team that is above 500 as it sits right now?
I think this is I think this is a treat. I do. I think that this is a little legit. I think they could be a 500 hockey team, and that's basically what they are. 4-3, like they're a 500 hockey team.
Yep.
And I think that's what they kind of will finish out as. I think we deserve or they deserve some respect for the way that they've obviously overcome a tremendous loss early in the year to kind of band together, and they've had some big wins. I mean, they absolutely beat the doors off of the Leafs. The other night they beat up Edmonton pretty good. And I think it's like 4 games so far where they've put up at least 6 goals. So they're scoring a lot, and they're getting, outputs from a lot of different characters. Like Cole Sillinger is coming through with a nice big kind of breakout season for them. Fantilli's scoring, and they're just getting a lot from a lot of people, and they're getting some decent goaltending as well. That Danil Tarasov kid, pretty good goalie. Like he's given them some saves, and I think Merzlikins even had a pretty good start the other night too. So I like Dean Evison as a coach as well. I think he's pushing the right buttons there. I think this, they're not going to be a playoff team by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that they're going to be a more competitive team than people thought. I think that this is a treat to watch right now, and I think this is about what we're going to see from Columbus all year.
Kent Johnson is the only minus player. I know plus minus isn't everything, but he's the only minus player on their entire roster of anyone who's played games this season. And I think that's testament to how they're working all together and what an underrated top line this season. Sean Monahan between Kirill Marchenko and Igor Chinikov. And they've actually been calling him Sean Monahanov, a little Russian factor in there, but those three are producing.
Yeah, all three of them producing. And
Marchenko's got 11 points in 8 games. Like he is producing. So we're just happy for Columbus and happy for Jay Forrester over at Locked On Blue Jackets to have a little bit of hope here with so much young talent. Like their future is still undeniably bright with their defensemen that are still not in the National Hockey League. You think notably of Adam Juracek, David Juracek, the brother of Adam. He's only played 2 games in the show this year. And then they've got Denton Mateychuk as well, who I think is going to be a stud at the NHL level. It's just a matter of building for them. They're, to me, in a similar position as Anaheim. The only difference is the Ducks have Lucas Dostal, who I will continue to bang the table, deserves a ton of accolades for what he's been doing, keeping them in games, most notably the Colorado game where they end up losing in overtime, but it was an absolute treat to watch him in goal. It got a big win too against the Islanders yesterday. The Islanders didn't even get to overtime, which is a continuation of last year. Trick or treat the New York Islanders, where there's been some rumors of some discomfort between the coaching staff and the management there already with Patty Waugh, but the results as well. They keep trucking along. They keep getting games to overtime. What are you feeling about the New York Islanders?
They can't score. Like it's the opposite of the Pittsburgh Penguins. They just
the Duclair loss was so tough.
Well, yeah, now he's out for the year, and like he was someone who they brought in to be kind of that big secondary scorer, and like it's not a super talented roster. Like they've got some good players like Bo Horvat, Matt Barzal, Anders Lee. Like there's still some good players there, but it's just not a group that's really like this is an issue last year, and it's continued to be an issue this year. They're getting good goaltending. Sorokin's playing well this year for them, which is obviously big. A nice bounce back season for Sorokin's going to go a long way for the Islanders. But I saw online there was a lot of people talking about how this might finally be it for Lou Lamoriello, because there's a lot of questionable things that he's done over the last couple of years. I'm still can't believe that they gave Pierre Engvall a 7-year deal last season, only to waive him the following year. Just unspeakably bad cap management. And I think it's going to continue to be uncomfortable for that team. I really, really do.
And we'll see what transpires next, because their last 2 games, both losses, but they dominated in both games. Again, Dostal shuts the door, but they outshot the Ducks 41-22 last night and lost 3-1. Their previous loss.
They just can't score.
Yeah. They've been struggling here. They've been shut out 3 times this season already, and then 1 goal in last night's game. So trick or treat the New York Islanders. You're saying they're a trick at this point?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Final one here. Trick or treat. As I pull up here, I want to get a good one for you. No, you know what? I'll put you on the hot seat.
You want me to get one on you?
Yeah, we'll do one more each.
All right, trick or treat here. The Boston Bruins, last in the Atlantic Division, and have not gotten good goaltending. A save percentage sub 900. Is this a trick or a treat? Are the Boston Bruins finally taking a step back?
I've been burned on this too many times, but what I will say is that when your 4th line is your best line consistently, and they have been, Mark Kaslik, Cole Koepke, and John Beecher, they're 2, 3, and 4 in points on this team behind David Pastrnak. I always say that's great for the 4th line, but probably not great for the team.
Yeah.
So they need more from Charlie McAvoy on the back end. They need more from, I think like they went into this year and the whole talk was, hey, we're going to play Bruins hockey. Charlie McAvoy is our smallest defenseman. We just got a bunch of trees back there. No shrubs allowed, but there's not much coming from those players. Mason Lohrei leads their D-corps with 4 points in 8 games, but beyond that and the defending aspect of it, it feels like they're probably giving up a couple too many easy ones. And Swayman's going to be able to get above 900. I don't think that's a hot take at all, but I do worry about the Boston Bruins because this Atlantic Division has caught up to them. And outside of that fourth line and Pasternak, there's not a whole lot of team speed there with Boston. No. And I think that's going to be their undoing if they don't turn it around.
Yeah, it's an aging group, an aging core. And even I think Marchand's got like 1 goal so far on the year. He hasn't looked like Brad Marchand that you have come to expect from him. Yeah, I think we're finally seeing the team take a couple steps back. I do think that this is for real. I think this is, which would be a treat to many in the Atlantic Division outside of the New England area.
Yeah, I'd say so. Trick or treat. The Ottawa Senators have a tough November schedule. Are you buying what you've seen from this team that scored 8 goals in 2 separate games this year? And the one thing that they have that the other teams who are all jockeying for position in, Linus Ullmark has only played in 4 games now after last night this year. Are you buying what the Sens are selling so far this year?
I'm buying it. I'm saying it's a trick or a treat. I am. I'm buying what this team is doing right now. They look pretty good. I mean, they're starting to get. I think Tim Stutz is up to 14 points. Had a 4-point effort the other night. Brady Tkachuk's still a stud. They're getting a lot of offense out of Jake Sanderson early on in the year, which is great for them. Josh Norris is still healthy.
Yeah, well, he was blocking shots. He was blocking shots in a 7-1 game last night. Like he is really that line. They moved Claude Giroux onto that line with Drake Batherson and Josh Norris. Giroux's on a 7-game point streak right now. He's got 11 points in his last 7 games.
He's big, man. Honestly, like Josh Norris staying healthy is big for that team. Really,
but
really
now Pinto's out. So that stat that I told you where Pinto, Norris, and Stützle, when they're in the lineup, the Sens are 29, 15, and 3 all time. It feels like all 3 of them just can't be healthy at the same time.
They never are, huh? They never are on the ice together.
Drives me nuts.
How long is Pinto's injury for?
I played through it, and now they're saying week to week, but they said that last Tuesday, so we'll see. But there was no cast, no walking boot, no anything. They won't even say what the injury is, so that in itself, there's kind of a cloud over the team. With Ullmark, they just said it was a strain, no word of where. It seems like they're being very cautious.
The Ullmark part was weird.
He was awesome last night, though.
I do think it's a treat, man. I think the Sens are the real deal. And
November 12th, buddy. Sens Leafs, Battle of Ontario.
Yeah, and it's getting reignited again, buddy. Should be a good game.
Looking forward to that. We'll be chatting before then, though. Next Wednesday, we'll be back. For now, we pass it over to Power Rankings Thursday here on the Locked On NHL Network. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment everywhere you get podcasts. For Mike DiStefano, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been another run around the Eastern Conference on Locked On NHL. Your team every day.